Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first webinar of the Agile Project Management in Technical Writing series that is delivered to you by joint efforts of SOAP Technical Communication and 3DA Poland. My name is Gosia Radymiak, and I'm the head of SOAP Technical Communication. My guest for today's webinar and the next three webinars is Paweł Kowaluk, Technical Director at 3DA Poland. Paweł will share with us today how you can use Kanban with Jira in technical writing projects. But before we start, I've got a few technical things I'd like to share with you now. First of all, everybody apart from Paweł and myself will be muted during this webinar, but you still can add questions or comments to the webinar in the live chat on YouTube. Secondly, the webinar is being recorded and it will be made available on YouTube right after this webinar. So if you want to share it with your colleagues, you'll be able to. And lastly, I encourage you to book 5 p.m., so same time, but next Thursday, when Paweł will be delivering the second part of this series. Of course, we'll create an event on Facebook and let you know about it, but keep in mind that this is already planned. Okay, and that's everything on my side. Paweł, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gosia. Good evening, everyone. Hello. I want to talk about how at 3DI we use Kanban or a Kanban-ish approach, and also Jira for technical writing projects, because I know this has been the subject of discussion for a long time now, and it is appealing and it has a lot of advantages, and hopefully you guys can also start using similar approaches wherever you are. So starting with what Kanban really is, we have to remember that it's usually referred to in the world of software development. So software developers need a very robust way of developing applications, especially right now in the modern world where everything is so quick and so develops so dynamically. The original approach to most projects and everything was the so-called waterfall, meaning that you start with your requirements at some point in time and then you work and work and work until you finish something and you release the final product. Now, nowadays, this wouldn't really work because your product changes all the time. For example, when using Google search, you may not have known, but it was in the beta phase until very recently. Same with Gmail, same with YouTube, same with a lot of applications like that, where technically everybody's using it, but practically there's still a lot of development ongoing. And every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or every month, there's a new build released. And sometimes even there's changes made every day. That's called, so when you have those builds released every week, every 2 weeks, every three weeks, those are called sprints. And at the end of the sprint is the publication phase. That's called Scrum, right? But Kanban is when you keep maintaining something and you do your builds like constantly, whenever you make some changes. So the idea here is for software developers to have a to-do list of important things, like tasks that will change the world, and then those tasks go through a pipeline of development with set stages. So there's a to-do list, there are things that are happening, and there are things that are done. When they're done, you don't worry about them anymore. But when they're done, you know that your product is richer with those features. And the advantages of this is you don't have to have a set delivery date. You can just work on something until it's done. And this is also good for maintaining existing products where somebody says, yeah, but this is not working. So you go back to your product and you make the changes and you make the fixes, and then you just update it live. So typically all online solutions, anything that is a website, a web application, is maintained in this fashion, especially those modern products. So how does this relate to technical writing? Yeah, so a technical writer works on slightly different projects, slightly more, content related. So you will be maintaining the website the part of the website which is the knowledge center, or you will be developing the online help or the manual for something. That's why you work in a separate world with different rules, and it's always been very difficult for technical writers to enter into Kanban or enter into Scrums. And people have struggled with that. And there are, different success stories of people, how they managed to do it. Let me talk about our case. 3DI is a technical writing services company, which means that we do technical writing for other companies. So we are not in the same building with them. We are not employees of the same company, so it gets harder sometimes to collaborate. And to cooperate with the software developers or the hardware developers or whoever they may be. They have their own cycles, and they tell us about, for a product that we are maintaining for them, they tell us there's a new feature, and they want us to describe what this new feature is. Okay, so we can do that. They also, and we add it to our to-do list, which is, our separate to-do list from what the developers are doing. And then they tell us, yeah, there's also a problem with what you have written, because either it's updated, like the application has been updated, and so the content is no longer up to date, or there was an error there that they spotted. Either way, they tell us, and we say, yeah, sure, we can fix that for you, and we add it to our to-do list. Now, it's not that simple with technical writers. It is just to do, in progress, and done, right? We have at 3DI, we have a bunch of other statuses, and and not all the requests that they have for us we can do right now, because we work with a budget for this month, and we can only give them so many days of technical writing. For example, just 5 days of technical writing. So maybe we can do some of the tasks that they are putting on our to-do list. That's why we have a pre-to-do column in our development cycle, meaning that we have items which are new. They just came in. Before they move to to-do, we figure if they are higher priority than other to-do items, whether we have the capacity, because maybe there are a lot of items in the other columns right now and we cannot take in new ones, etc. When something is in our to-do list, we take care of it in the order of priority, meaning the top items are the most important ones. However, sometimes, you have to shuffle them, because maybe because maybe something ran too long and you just have enough time to pick up a small task which is maybe lower priority. You do it anyway. We have a SME queries column, because before we start work, we have to ask the questions, and sometimes they get stuck with the SMEs because they're busy or they're on holiday or something. So we have asked the question about a task, and it is stuck in the SME queries column for a while. We don't worry about that, right? We wait for the input. We remind them, and that way we can always go back and see. Okay, in our SME reviews, we have in SME queries we have so many tasks, and these are the ones. So is it worth doing the follow-up right now or escalating, etc.? Once we have all the information from the SMEs, the task will go into the in progress column. This is where we're working on it, and doing all sorts of updates to the content, describing the Atlas feature or whatever, and then it can go to on hold for whatever reason. For example, we don't have the resources, we don't have the knowledge, or the SMEs could have told us, hey, this has to go on hold, when it was in the SME queries column, right? Because we asked them a question: how do we describe the Atlas feature? And they say, actually, Atlas is not quite finished. It's going to be done next quarter, so hold on, and just wait for a little bit. So we put it into the on hold column. But hopefully, we did some development when it was in progress, and we have it in a good state. So we send it for peer review, somebody from 3DI to take a look at it, so that it's in good shape before it goes to SME review. In the SME review, we get comments from our customer, and they tell us what to fix. Then they tell us, what else needs to be added, etc. The review process, right? And once we've done that, gone through all the review iteration with our SMEs, and we have our approvals, we put it on the draft server or whatever, the draft environment, and there's QA going on, meaning that we check the quality assurance, right? We make sure the new topics that we wrote open correctly, and all the links work, and all the graphics are visible, and all those quality items that are needed. And once it's done, it's done. And also, we don't work with tasks like fix the technical spec, because that doesn't give you enough information. Update the technical spec for the Atlas feature based on the most accurate information from James in R&D is a more realistic description, because it gives you the name of the feature that you're going to be describing. It sets some expectations around what you want the quality to be, and it also tells you who to contact, James in R&D. Typically, descriptions like this would also have some indication of why we're doing this, because that helps us understand how we're supposed to do it. So that's generally very good practice for those tiny tasks that you do in an agile process. So at any given point in time, our to-do list or our Kanban board is going to be full of items in different stages. And it's important with Kanban, it's important to know how many items you can have in any given column at any given time. And this depends on how many people you have working on it. Because if you get too many in a given column, this column becomes the bottleneck, and you can no longer process tasks efficiently, meaning there's a lot of tasks waiting to be done, instead of people working constantly on creating new value added. So when you come to a Kanban board, some of the tasks are going to be yours, assigned to you. These are the ones you're doing. And in Jira, there's good ways to see which ones are yours. You can filter the Kanban board. You can, or you can just look at the whole board and find your little portrait in the box that represents a task. And if you work with Jira, you know what I mean. But basically, Jira gives you this graphical interface for looking at the whole workload. And something that we do, which is not Kanban, is we do Scrum meetings. And I want to do a separate session about those meetings and tell you more about how we do them and why we do them. But the basic idea is that we meet every day and we talk about what everybody did yesterday and what we're planning on doing today and what's on everyone's plate, so that people know what's happening but also can help, or can offer some advice or hear something that is relevant to them, and they say, hey, wait a minute, I worked on that, or I'm working on something similar, could we work together? Or somebody has a problem and says, team, I don't know what to do with this because it's been in the SME queries for a while and there was no response, and somebody says, actually we already have that information, so you can just use what we have. Or we talk about priorities and rearranging things. And remember, this is our Kanban board, which is separate from what the developers are doing. So whatever their cycle is, we always deliver a state of the help system, of the knowledge system that we support. We always deliver that in our own time, in our own cycle. So even though we're talking about Kanban, we have several projects in the same board, and some of them are or in the same Scrum meeting. Some of them are done according to the Scrum methodology, and there are sprints, for example, and we are driving towards an end date. But that doesn't break the system still, even though there's this disparity of deadlines and who the SMEs are and what people are working on, still this approach works. And yeah, that Kanban is not the same as Scrum, etc. But things get a little fuzzy in the agile methodology, especially if you do it swiftly and quickly, and and you play with it. So the rule of thumb we try to follow is that you just customize, but not too much, because you're gonna end up with something which is just you don't know where this approach came from. So if you keep using words like Kanban and Scrum, somebody's gonna say, hey, you're getting too far from the original Kanban idea, and still, if you're using words like Kanban and Scrum, you can read books on it and you can get knowledge, and then you can ask people and they give you support, and then you can deliver a webinar, which is also going to be something useful for other people. And if you say Kanban, they will come to listen to your webinar because this is something that they can relate to, because they also use Kanban. But yeah, where was I? So the main points of me talking here is that we do have a different workflow for technical writers than our software developers that we are working with, because they are our customers and because they are external companies, but also because they are working on something else, right? They are working on an application or a piece of hardware, whereas we are working on a knowledge center. So we don't get tied down to what they are doing. Now, I know in some cases they want us to release the documents within the sprint cycle that they have, but in those cases we stay a little bit behind. So say they develop something for sprint 7 and we can release documentation about that for sprint 8 or 9, just take our time, because we know best what our audience want to read and when they need to get it. Those daily meetings really help. Because in approaches like Scrum and Kanban, you want the team to be responsible for the tasks. So if you meet every day, there's this sense of responsibility versus there being a PM who assigns work, or somebody who assigns work to people. If you meet, you kind of feel responsible for what your colleagues are doing. You kind of feel like the whole project, or even a bunch of projects, like in our case, those bunch of projects are all the responsibility of the same group. And this gives you a good feeling overall, because when you're working towards something that makes sense, your work is more enjoyable and you get less depressed about being useless. Well, a little bit less. And then we also like to customize whatever approaches we take, but it's good to know what you're customizing. So learn about an approach like Kanban or like Scrum. Learn about the tools that are useful around that. Learn the words, learn the terminology, use that. There's cool practices you can have for Scrum meetings, like using playing cards for estimating, or t-shirt sizes or whatever you think is interesting. Game of Thrones characters, for example. Yeah, customize. So if you remember just 3 things out of my short webinar, I would like those to be the 3 that you see on the screen right now. Now, I know the main problem of technical writers is always the SMEs, because those people are busy and they are working on something and it's hard to get information. Kanban or Scrum or anything else is not going to solve those problems. That's like a different story altogether. But still, using Kanban and using Scrum is a fun way of making your work more agile and raising the quality. And this is something that's been working for us. Now, I hope this short, very brief presentation was useful to you guys. Let me know if you have any questions, and you can also contact me offline on social media, or if you have my email, go ahead and email me. Yeah, Goshar, do we have any questions in the thing?
Hey, Paweł, thank you for delivering this webinar. Yes, we do have 3 questions. I can read them to you, or you can take a look at the chat. Let me know which one you prefer.
Let me look at the chat. I don't see anything.
Okay, so I'll read them to you. The first one is, How do you align your internal workflow at 3DI with the client's workflow? Do you try and find one-to-one match between your workflow stages and their workflow stages?
No, we don't, and that's in some cases it's because they don't tell us and they don't want to share this information with us. But if they did, we still probably wouldn't do that because they are working on something else. They have different workflow stages. So if you're developing software, you will have the QA, you will have the testing, but with documentation, you'll also have the SME queries, for example. It's in the SME queries, or you will have other things like peer review. You could have a language check or language review, or you could have the QA of the website, or you could have the publication phase, which could be a separate phase, which doesn't correspond to a software development process. And this gets even more disparate when you're working with a hardware manufacturer and they have a vastly different process. I don't know if this question extends also to the dates, the release dates, etc. But in some cases we match the release date with a particular milestone in their development, and in some cases they ask us to deliver by a particular date, which is arbitrary. And it's whatever they think is necessary. So then we try to work backwards from that date to plan how much work we can do. I hope that answers the question. So what's the next one?
Yes, the next one is, do you have a separate backlog for items that need to wait in a queue, or is it how you use the new column in your Kanban board?
Yeah, so we depending on why they are waiting, they gotta wait in a specific column. There are those wait columns, like on hold is one column, and then there's also the SME queries column. This is where things tends to wait and get ready to be ripe and good to be developed.
Okay, and when you have like new items that still wait for the technical writers to be picked, then it's the new column. You don't have a separate column that is hidden before the new one.
Oh, right. Okay. I see what you meant by new. I missed that. Yeah, the new, like the first one. Let me maybe go back to that. Yeah, so yeah, this is where things wait to be prioritized and processed and kind of analyzed. Because we got to do a few things with a new item. Like one thing is to analyze what they really want, and do we understand what they want, and what impact it might have. And then when we have this analysis, we can estimate how much time it's going to take, especially if we are working towards a release date. For example, it's a sprint. Then we can say that within a 2-week sprint we can pick up so many items. And is this going to be one of them? Well, it depends on how important it is, but also how big it is. And then it also tells us who can do it, because Jack is only available 3 days a week and Mary is available 5 days a week. Then Mary can take this big task.
Okay, thank you. And we have one more. Maybe some more questions will come, but this one is, are the daily meetings for writers, or do you mean that the writer takes part in the developer's Scrum meetings?
Yeah, so those are the daily meetings for writers. We haven't worked on a project where we take part in the Scrum meetings with the developers yet, but it could be vastly different if you're working within the same company. And this could be useful if the technical writer can contribute to what the rest of the team are doing. Yeah, but yeah, to answer the question, not for us. No, those are separate meetings, just for technical writers.
Okay, we have one more question. Do you have a documentation Scrum Master or some kind of task dispatcher, or is it team's responsibility to assign tasks?
Yeah, that's a tricky one because we don't have a Scrum Master or a task dispatcher. But we do have certain projects where some people take the lead and they, for example, analyze all the tasks and they kind of know who should pick up which tasks. That's in some projects, but overall we try to make it the responsibility of the whole team, so people pick up those tasks and they do them themselves. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there are no more questions, right?
Yes, there are no more questions. So I think we're wrapping up.
Yeah, sure. I think people can also ask the questions under the video, right? You'll see them.
Yeah. Everyone, if you're shy or not sure what question to ask and it comes to your mind a bit later when we finish, you can still add your questions in the comments under the video, and we'll stay in contact with Paweł to make sure that the questions are answered. For now, Paweł, thank you a lot for sharing with us. This is not the end of our webinars. We're going to meet, as I mentioned at the beginning, next week, so next Thursday, 5 p.m., a short webinar, this time about Scrum meetings at 3DI. If you're curious to learn more about 3DI or SOAP, you can follow the links in the description of this webinar. And thank you a lot. Hope to see you next week here. Thank you, Paweł.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Gosia. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.